Live.
We're live. All right. This is Grace Ann Bennett, and I'm here interviewing Gregory Roberts about his upcoming book, Pirate Soldier King. So, hello, Gregory.
Hello, Grace Ann.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's good to be with you again.
Yep. And I'm excited about this conversation. And thinking about the title of your book, which I love, I think it's a great title. It's intriguing. Pirate Soldier King, thinking about those three things together. So, Uh, tell us a little bit about kind of why that's the title of the book and how you kind of got to that idea.
Um, I was kind of looking just at the dramatic or narrative arc of what, we say things happen to us, but what the path I chose to go through in my life. And that felt like I certainly I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell, so I like archetypes. And the I was very much in pirate mode for like, I don't know, better part of 6 years. And that was kind of like I modeled myself after that. And I did some ancestry, and I was like, oh, my ancestor is Black Bart, who wrote the Pirate Code, who inspired is the basically who Johnny Depp plays in Pirates of the Caribbean. Um, and so I had this kind of like thing that yeah, yar, like let's go forth and conquer and steal everything we can and just make mayhem in the world. Um, and that was the idea, and it's certainly a romanticized archetype, in popular media and Hollywood as well. So that was I one time I went to the beach and like I saw like all these $3 million mansions with pirate flags flying, and I was like, well, that's cute, but I don't think they know what the hell they're doing. Like I'm the pirate here. So that was the pirate portion of it. Um, and then I got caught being a pirate and ended up doing a significant amount of time in prison. And in prison, there's kind of a constant Cold War going on between the gangs in prison, and that's how the peace is maintained, but that's also the tension. And so the idea is, I mean, and I was not at like a camp or any of these cushy places. I was at a level 5 federal max penitentiary in Beaumont, Texas. And the idea is that everybody is ready to go to war at any point in time. Like you carry a knife, and if things pop, which is like a fight between men of two different races or two different gangs, then just everybody goes at once. Like if there's like a Hispanic guy and a white guy fighting, then you just attack the nearest Hispanic guy, and it just goes.
Wow.
And that's kind of one of the rules of prison is like so no one wants that, right? But it's always present, that threat. And so I kind of saw myself in retrospect as like a soldier on the yard. I was a soldier for my little army. Uh, and and we trained every day. Like we trained in the cells, we trained in combat, and when we worked out, the only reason we were working out is to get bigger muscles so that if a knife stabbed us, there'd be more boundary between our skin and our organs. And
Wow.
so, or if we were attacking, then we could swing harder and punch harder. And the endurance stuff was like so that you can just fight longer. um, and so that was kind of the soldier part. And then I I got some faith in me, and got a relationship with Jesus, and then I really started thinking about what am I going to do when I get out to the free world again, um, because I had a date, of when I would be free, and I started to put a tremendous amount of energy into thinking about, well, okay, I got roughly 50 years left on this earth, like what am I going to do with it? Like when I die, what's my legacy? I don't want it to be a pirate who went to prison. That's I mean that's a part of it, but that's not what I want to stand for. So I have this opportunity, and it kind of harkened back to a conversation I had with my dad prior to going to prison, about sovereignty and kings. And I thought the pirate was cooler because the pirate robbed the king. And my dad attempted to correct me on it, but it took a prison term to figure that out. So
Well, what did he say? What did your dad say about? So this game that you played, it was like rock, paper, scissors, right? So we
yes,
played it now. Like how would it, so we played it now.
yeah.
Put rock,
So the
paper,
idea
scissors.
is like
What was it?
rock paper scissors, right? Like scissors cuts paper, paper covers rock, and rock smashes scissors. So it's like this beautiful thing of like you don't know what the other person is going to play, so it's fairly random but also intuitive, and it's a kind of a beautiful construct of a game. And it was my friend's favorite. We used to play it all the time. When I started the pirate thing, I actually just came up in my head with this thing of pirate, soldier, king, which was like the king orders the soldier to his death. So king trumps soldier. The soldier captures the pirate. So soldier trumps pirate. And the pirate robs the king. So pirate trumps king. So
Oh.
same thing. You just you play it, and it's kind of this equivalency of three things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I explained it to my father one night. I was visiting him, and we were having a glass of wine, and I said, and I always play pirate because pirate's the best. It's the funnest. Like you get to stick it to the king, and it's just like, and it's total freedom. Like you're not taking anybody's orders. You're just going around the world, taking what you want, doing what you want. And my dad, like, almost he had this like sad look on his face. And he said, no, no, like King is the one to play. I'm like, nah, the king he is like this construct. He has to maintain the castle. He's got all these responsibilities. He has to order the army around. Like, it's just a pain in the ass being a king. The pirate effectively is a king. He just gets to do whatever he wants. And my dad goes, well, yeah, but the king can actually make the world a better place. And I was like, yeah, but they don't. I was a cynic back then. I was like, just looking at like presidents and leaders and things. I was like, they're just selfish people. He's like, well, it doesn't matter if they don't. Like, if I were king, I would. And if you were king, you could. Like, get your head around that. At the
Wow.
time, I couldn't. And I was just like, yar. but, but once I was in prison, like, just reflecting on my whole life, looking back on it, I was like, maybe my dad knew a few things. like,
Yeah. Did you
And I,
talk
and
about
I came to the conclusion that he was actually right. Like that, although there are malevolent kings, there are also benevolent kings, and that is the place of maximum power. And so in wanting to leave a good legacy in my life and for my children and the planet, I felt like, yeah, okay, now is the time to raise into that sovereignty, into that third archetype.
Okay. Did you tell your dad that you've come to appreciate and like his view of things, the Pirate Soldier King?
I did, yes. And yeah, he's getting a little up in age. He doesn't remember the story exactly how I do, but yeah. but he does appreciate the change of heart. Yes.
Uh, okay, so you speak about change of heart. What are some moments where you felt like you really did, you had a moment where your heart changed?
Well, I would say that prior to my piracy, I was a serial entrepreneur. I formed and founded and grew and sold a bunch of technology companies, a series of technology companies, and that was from age like 17 onward. So really, my primary model uh, of interacting with people was just like telling them what to do. Like I was the CEO, so I had my vice presidents, and at smaller companies, I just had my direct reports, and I had their annual goals and their quarterly goals and their monthly tasks, and I just made sure it got done, and disciplined when it didn't and rewarded when it did. And that was like, I just expected my orders to be followed. Um, and I didn't really realize it because it worked. When you have a company and you grow it and it gets profitable, and You share the profits with the employees. Like everybody's happy. So even though I was kind of an asshole, it worked out because everyone got compensated well and everyone got to feed their families and live in nice places. And so, okay, that was, that was the price to pay. And I felt like I was decently compassionate as a boss. It wasn't,
We'll have to talk to them.
huh?
We'll talk to them.
Okay, but basically it was like that. But that was my mode of relating to people, was just like command. Uh, and that I came to realize later in life is not a good way to have like friendship relationships. There's much more of a give and take and a respect, and you might at times command each other, but it's a two-way street. And the best friendships are mutual. They're not employer-employee relationships. They're like partnerships. And so when I went into prison, or to jail before prison, you kind of go to jail and then wait for sentencing at trial. When I was incarcerated, I still had that mindset, and one of the hardest parts of being incarcerated is your impotence in the world. Like I had two kids who were in their late teenage years. I still wanted to provide for them. I still wanted to like be there for them, but I couldn't because I was in a little cage. And so I was calling everyone I knew, like, do this with Maxwell, do this with Allison, like take him to lunch, give him this thing. Like I was just, and I had this. I made a spreadsheet with pencil and paper of like all the tasks I had ordered all my family and friends to do on my behalf in the world.
Wow.
And I would like lay into them if like, I called them 7 days later. I'd be like, did you do those three things? And they'd be like, well, we did two. I was like, why didn't you do the third one? Like, what's the problem here? Like, I'm telling you to do it. And most people were like, yeah, we're working on it. But finally, my brother, who is a fairly accomplished surgeon and is not used to taking bullshit from anyone, it was about, I guess, 3 months in, he just snapped at me. And he was like, I am not your bitch. He goes, you're the one who got yourself into prison. You're the one who made these choices. I am helping you, and you can be thankful that I'm doing anything you're asking me to do. Not these 12 things, but even that I'm doing one of them. I am taking care of your kids, and I am sending them the things you're asking me to, and I'm not doing it on your timeline, and that because I got my own life to run, and my own family to provide for, and and he really like yelled at me, and I realized pretty immediately that he was right. I was like, oh my God, like what? I'm still in like the CEO mode, but I'm a prisoner, along with heroin and meth addicts and just derelicts. And so, and I am completely dependent on my family and friends to do anything in the free world right now. Like they are my agents, but they're my voluntary agents. I'm not, in most part, I'm not paying them. But I'm saying like, you know, I should be happy they're answering the phone, basically. Like,
Mhm.
because they didn't even know when I would call. My calls were completely random. I got one call every 48 hours, but sometimes it was 30 hours and sometimes it was 60 hours between, like sometimes it was 11 at night, sometimes it was 7 in the morning, and no one ever knew when I would call.
And
So
how do you actually give back to people while you're in prison? Like, how does that actually work to give when you're
when that was the flip.
in-
Yeah, that was the flip. So at about the same time, or yeah, in that time zone of getting yelled at by my brother, I was also like reading the Bible really carefully, and I realized that Jesus really was like a servant king, like his sovereignty was, and even the best kings are like they are servants of the people. Like the reason they're king is so that they can manage things efficiently, but on behalf of the citizenship. And so I was like, I'm just ordering people around. Like this is not working. Uh, and so I actually just like the next couple phone calls I made, I had like 7 people I had on rotation for calls. And the next phone call I make, I didn't ask for anything. I took that spreadsheet, I ripped it up. I was like, you know what? I've asked for too much already. And I stopped asking for anything. And at the end of each call, or like they're 15-minute calls, like toward like the 10-minute mark, I'd be like, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you?" And there was silence on the phone because people were like,
What?
"What? Is this the same guy who was like telling me to do 8 things and he didn't ask me for anything?" And at first they were like, "No, no, 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 we're good, we're good." And slowly, like people started, could you talk to so and so and ask them this, or could you make me some artwork, for somebody's birthday, and just because I'm an artist also, and and slowly they trickled in, and it took like I want to say 2 to 3 months, Grace Ann, before somebody I called, I said, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you?" They're like, "No, I'm good." And then they said, "Do you need anything?" They asked me, and it felt so good. I was like, you know what? I never waited for that question before. Like I just demanded, like a
Wow.
like a little prick, and and to hear that, like someone asking me what I needed, like voluntarily, it was just it melted me. Like it was humbling, and I was like, wow, that's the most caring thing to hear when you're incarcerated. Like having to mask that. Yeah.
Instead of you demanding it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And I did not ever demand again. I was like, that's a different mode, and that's not where I was at. I mean, I demanded on the inside with inmates because but not to my people on the outside.
Okay. Interesting. So what do you think that in terms of kind of growing into a man and building character, what part of prison or your experience helped you become more of a man, or things that you're proud of in terms of your evolution and your character building moments that maybe you can't experience on the outside, or at least it was unique to your situation?
I honestly think that the biggest lesson I learned is about combat and fighting, and um, that doesn't have to be physical. It was in my thing. Like you pretty much have to fight in jail and prison. It's a respect thing. Like if you're not fighting, then you're getting taken advantage of. Um, and I was very uncomfortable with that, with physical combat. I was like, I'm a lover, not a fighter. Like as a child, I was like really on the hippie side of things. Like I had long hair. I went to school barefoot. I was just like love, love, love. And that works in certain environments. But it's also it's not it's not manly. Like I came to believe that there are times in a man's life where you have to stand up and fight, and that could be it doesn't have to be with your fists, but there's a time when you have to make a stand and say, "This is who I am. This is what I believe in," and look at another human and say that behavior is unacceptable, and here's what we're going to do about it. And sometimes all it takes is that verbal expression, and it's resolved. Often, actually, um, but sometimes you're against another alpha male who disagrees with you. It gets to a level of disrespect mutually, and you just go to blows. Um, and I feel that's okay. I I do. I feel it's kind of like part of our animal DNA. Animals fight all the time, especially males, and it's just I think it's been, especially in Western civilization with all our laws and things, it's just like been uh, well, at least in my culture, I wouldn't say like all economic classes and things, but generally like we don't fight, and I don't think that's a good thing. Um, I think that actually like getting in conflict with someone in prison, and then the kind of the crux of it was like I had a conversation with the guy, and he kind of kowtowed to me and said, "Oh, it's no problem. I'm sorry," and he apologized and stuff. And then he went out and did it again and again and again. And I went to my friend. I was like, What's the deal here?" He's like, "Well, you're gonna have to just smash him out. You're just gonna have to, because the righteous man always wins in a fight." I was like, "Yeah, okay, all right." So I went to his, gang leader, and I said, "Hey, this guy's causing a problem. He goes, fine, take it in the cell, like one on one, go in there, and you go in the cell. They slam the door behind you, and you just go, and that's terrifying. Um, it's a cage fight. It's a cage fight with a cement floor and a lot of sharp metal edges around. I'm actually just getting like my heart's accelerating just even talking about this. Um, and it was a very difficult thing, and we just went at it like animals and beat the hell out of each other. And I guess like 30 seconds later or 45, that's a long time to fight, by the way. Like a lot can happen in 45 seconds. Um, we were both a little bloody and ripped clothes and on the ground, and they opened the door and pulled us out, and pretty much everyone congratulated me, and that dude did not fuck with me again.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So how would you apply that, and what would be the lesson, or what would you want people to take from that into, you know, real life?
Like I said, I think everyone, I'd encourage them to look in the mirror and understand, what they stand for in this world. Part of what you stand for in this world is deciding your values, um, and projecting those values without apology. That doesn't mean you're not going to listen to other points of view, but it means that if just what fights come down to is respect, and it really is. Um, like you can debate with someone about whatever your political views are and things, and that's fine. But if it gets personal and someone like denigrates you or your family or threatens you or your family, then that's the time to go. Um, and that's and it's and it's courage. That's what it is. And courage. And I spent a lot of time reading the dictionary because your reading materials are extremely limited in prison. Like for a certain amount of time, the only books I had were the Bible and the dictionary. Luckily, I had the OED, like a pocket version of it. So it's excellent, highly recommended Oxford English Dictionary, with all the etymologies. And so courage comes from coeur, which is a French word, which comes from the Latin, which is heart. And it's like that's it. Like, how strong is your heart? And that I think that we need to connect with that.
Okay. So one of the things I'm curious about, so you talk about respect is important. How do you build trust both in prison and outside of prison, especially with this population that has kind of betrayed different people's trust or broken that trust with society or another person or whoever, right? So how do you look at the idea of being trustworthy now that you're out of prison? And how do you build that? Are there any lessons on kind of rebuilding trust?
Yeah, because I have a lot of trust to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my 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 family and friends felt fairly betrayed when ironically a little when I got caught because I was effectively removed from their life. I was a peer and a I believe I was a positive influence, and I became just this dependent, on a different planet, essentially. But there was no visits because of COVID and other complications, and so like my only connection was writing letters and like old-fashioned letters with a pen and pencil with postal mail, and phone calls, which were very infrequent because, like I said, it was one every 48 hours. Um, and those are 15-minute calls. Uh, so trust, um, it kind of goes the same thing. Like, um, there's this expression that says, "My word is law," and I think that's a foundational thing, especially for men. Um, and what it means is that if I say something or make a commitment, that will happen, and it's much easier said than done. Uh, Again, in my prior life, I guess I could be classified as a pleaser. Like I just loved to, like I was like yes to everything. Someone asked me, "Wait, can you do this?" I was like, "Yeah," and I think I can do it. It doesn't mean I will do it, but I was just like, "Yes, yes, yes, I'll take care of it." And when I looked back on it, I was like, I probably did 10% of the things that I promised people. And some people called me on it. They were like, "You bullshit, you lied to me," and I was like, "I didn't. I just," and I really realized I had lied to myself because, someone's like, hey, can you do this for me? And I was like, in my head, that'll take an hour. And I have an hour this afternoon. Of course I'll do it. And then life happens, right? And you don't. And when you finally get to it 5 days later, it doesn't take an hour, it takes 5 hours. And and you get 3 hours into it, and then something else happens. And I mean, this is life. But what it taught me was to be very, very, very conservative. And if someone asks me to do something, I'm like, I'll think about it, or no. And then, and often they get offended. What do you mean you won't do that for me? And I'm like, look, I this is my to-do list. Like, this is my plate. These are my tasks. And that doesn't fit into it anytime soon. I'm sorry. Like, I'd love to help you, but no. And so that was hard. That was a hard turn for me, because sometimes when you say no, you're an asshole and people don't like it. So I was like, well, it's better to say no than I'd say yes and then never do it for you,
Right.
or yes and do it shoddily. So this all just comes to my word is law, which is, it's even more important incarcerated because pretty much nobody has anything, right? I mean, your material possessions are like, when I walked out of there, I had a very small gym bag. I think it had like one pair of underwear, a pair of socks, and a Bible in it. I mean, that's it. So, so you don't have much in prison, and the stuff you do have is often taken by the guards. So economically, everyone's kind of on a similar playing field, and 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 you and you what you say is important, because if you say to that someone that you'll do something and you don't, then that's taken as disrespect, and then there's the fight again.
Mhm.
So I mean, I'd say that even before going to prison, I started to really understand that, and then being in there, it cemented it. And so now people ask me if I can help them with something, and I'm like, I'd love to, but no, and that's just how it is, and yeah, if our values are aligned, our projects are aligned, then maybe we'll get to a yes, but we'll plan it together, and it will, this sort of thing.
Right. And do you think that that goes into this thing where if you could break the law, breaking the word, does it go with the whole breaking of something or crossing certain lines that other people like wouldn't cross? I mean, I'm just trying to do the, and maybe this isn't a good question, but I'm just trying to think of, because if someone thinks about you were in prison, that's like you did something against society, you got yourself there because you broke certain societal laws, right? And so that makes you less trustworthy as a human on earth, right? Because you think that person, or at least
I think it makes me more trustworthy.
how so?
Seriously,
Okay.
because laws are an attempt to codify morality and like what's right. And I think what's right is actually pretty simple for most people. Like, again, it goes to the heart. Like, your heart knows what's right. And what's right is to love other people, treat people with respect, protect your family and loved ones, and escalate that to community, nation, you know, species, world.
Mhm.
But just be a protector, be a provider. It's like it's really simple. And every religion on planet Earth, in their scripture, they have like some basic laws, Ten Commandments, or the I don't even remember what they are in Hinduism, but there's an amazing like mapping between those. Like, these are the basic premises of good behavior in the world. Um, and the second part is law is defined by the exception. Like, that's a primary legal premise, which means that we have this law like thou shalt not kill. But if it's self-defense, it's okay. But if you're in the military and you're at war, it's okay. But and then this has to be detailed, and that's why law is like 10,000 books and not just 10 sentences. Um, to my point being that like we all know what the right thing to do is, and we shouldn't have to think about whether we're breaking the law or not. Like, we just do the right thing. If you see somebody getting hurt on the street, or getting beat up, then you go in to defend them, and you don't worry about that you might get a charge with assault and battery. You just you do the right thing.
And do you feel like after your time in prison, you're doing more of the right things, just that helped like put that in clear focus? Like, how do you feel like were you changed or evolved?
Well,
Okay.
yes, actually, yeah. And that's the fascinating thing to me, is that like a lot of times just saying something, um, verbalizing something like resolves a situation, especially well, in the civil world, especially like in the free world. You see something that you think needs addressed, you go up and speak to it, and often that resolves the matter. And it does take courage because you're like, if I say something, am I going to get punched in the face? Like, um, but I haven't been punched in the face yet.
Good. Yeah. That's good. So you don't have to use those fighting skills. You haven't had to use those yet on the outside.
No.
That's
And there's a thing that, there's a kind of a truism, which I do believe, as long as alcohol isn't involved,
yeah.
um, like the best fighter in the world rarely gets in fights
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because first of all, it's a body language read. Like if someone walks up to you who has combat skills, it's fairly clear.
Right.
And I'm not going to say like it's mentally clear. Like not everyone can recognize that in their mind, but it's a body language read, and you're
Okay.
like, oh, that person's not to be fucked with.
Right.
Um, and and I don't think that's something that can be posed. I think it's just something that comes from experience.
Yeah.
Um,
One.
and
Oh, go ahead.
like that person will take it to that level if necessary, and that's a scary thing because most people won't. So so if I go in like and I see something going down the wrong way and I speak to it, I've already accepted that it may get to like a very bad place, and I'm prepared for that. Um, and almost because of that preparation and because of that understanding, it never does. Or I shouldn't say never, but it has not yet, and generally won't
Right.
because there's sense about it.
Yeah. One part of the book that I keep going back to is, and I don't plan on robbing a bank, but I'm
Ever, ever, ever again.
exactly exactly. Well, I would never. Reading your book, I have no desire to rob a bank, but and there's no money in there, right? So not as much money as there was before now that everything's gone digital. But the one scene that I keep going back to is this idea of kind of gearing up to do this thing and getting the courage up to do something that's kind of scary for you. And then you do it with such conviction because you have to ask for the money with no gun and get someone to hand over all this money. So, in a twisted way, like I can use that as a way to do something good for my life that I'm
Oh,
taking
100%.
that I'm
Yes.
trying to take action and be very clear with like this is what I want and this is what I'm and just have that conviction, the clarity and the confidence to go in there and ask for something where I think a lot of times in our society, especially women, like we sometimes we're afraid to ask, and so in a funny
I
way,
think escalated Grace Ann from from an ask to a demand.
right. Right. So I feel like what's the positive side that you learned from robbing banks and getting people to hand over money without a gun that you could think about like how that I don't know. If there's at least for me, I'm taking it as a positive, as that I have to take a deep breath and like push myself out of my comfort zone and be more clear with what I'm asking for.
Well, let me get back to you on that. um,
But
what I would recommend is do a skydiving lesson first.
well, I'm not going to rob a bank, but I'm just thinking
No,
about
I'm saying like these are the basic premise I think you're getting at is like how do I transcend my social or cultural conditioning to do something that's uncomfortable for me that might actually benefit everyone. And like when I did first rob a bank, what it felt like, so I actually did a strange thing skydiving. Like I guess nowadays mostly if you go to skydiving lessons, they take you on a tandem jump, so you're like strapped to another human. Um, I was like old school 20th century. We just jumped out of the plane. Like there was no second human. And for that, so we practiced like jumping off picnic tables and stuff. And and when we got to the plane, the jump master was just like, go. And I was like, and I was like hanging on to the struts of the wing of the plane, like thinking, this dude's asking me to jump out of this is the stupidest, craziest thing I've ever done in my life. And I was like, but what am I gonna do? Climb back in the plane? So it's just like I just let go and the wind poof, and and I did end up breaking my ankle, by the way. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I don't think anyone did. Um, and one person did crawl back in the plane, but I jumped, and I remember thinking like, this is close to like suicide. Like every animal bone in my body is saying get back in the plane, and I still jumped. And so it's like a snapping thing where, why? Because I want to fly. Because I want to have the experience of free fall. I want to have the experience of like flying through the air. That's why I'm doing it. Um, so it's called a static line jump because like there's a cable to the plane that actually pulls your parachute.
Mhm.
Um, so you don't have to do that. You still have to steer down and land. Um, but it's that kind of thing. And cliff diving is similar, right? Just where you're like scared shitless and you look down, it's like 60 feet. You're like, I'm gonna die, but you're not gonna die.
Right.
You
Right.
might get hurt a little,
Just
but
go to Disneyland. I mean, maybe start there, go jump.
I mean, whatever your comfort zone is.
Yeah.
Bungee jumping is another great
Right,
one.
there we go.
It's funny;
Yeah.
these are all jumping things, but that I guess I'm saying I feel these are healthier ways of achieving that same cognitive courage. Where
Right.
you're like, you think you're gonna die, but really you're just building the strength to make uncomfortable decisions.
Right.
And that metaphor maps into like what you said, like maybe asking for money in your case as a
Mhm.
startup founder or
Mhm.
whatever it is. Like like embrace the discomfort because the results are good.
Right. Okay, one last question. And we could, there's so much more of this book that I'd want to dive into in your life, and there's so many more things, even funny stories about the music, and there's just a lot of things I think people will be curious about. But if you think about what you're most excited,
It's all in the book.
it's all in the book, so they can read it. Exactly. All the tales. So, but if you're thinking about going into your servant king mode and starting to step into that archetype, what are you most excited about in terms of that role, and what's the kind of legacy that you're starting, and what are some of the things that you're doing to start to build that legacy and build that life?
I think mostly at this point is just like communicating the message. I feel like I went to a very dark place or dark places. Again, kind of going to Joseph Campbell archetypes, like I did the work. I went into the depths of the cave. I hopefully brought back some wisdom, and I want to share that wisdom so that, basically that people can make their lives better and they don't have to go the path that I did. Um,
And what would be, and you think about that, anyway, I guess we can get into further in terms of what those words of wisdom are. Are they embedded in the book, or like what?
I didn't explicitly embed them in the book, and
Hmm.
that's intentional. I don't feel the need to beat anyone over the head. I have to believe that they're implicitly in there. Like, I mean, at least when I've read books as a kid and as an adult, like, I don't really like self-help books. They're like, here's the 8 things you can do. I'm much more about like, let me read this book. Oh, that inspires me, and I'm not even like deconstructing the actual lessons, but they're just that it's implicit in the story.
Okay. So yeah, so they'll get them because we're smart humans, and maybe we'll get different lessons depending on who we are and where we are, right?
I hope so. Yeah, I mean that's
Right.
the human journey. Yes,
Right.
yes. It's
All right.
piratesoldierking.com.
There we go. We'll go to piratesoldierking.com and then read the book, hopefully see the movie. I mean, I would definitely want to see this movie.
All right.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Gregory.
Thank you, Grace Ann.